Well, major crime continues to soar in New York City. The very latest NYPD figures show serious crime is up 36% so far this year. And while murders and shootings recently saw a 10% drop, rapes actually increased 10% and assaults were up over 19%.
Critics say new bail reform laws and other progressive crime policies are to blame for the spike in crime. Rafael Mangual is the author of a new book. It's called Criminal Injustice: What the Push for Decarceration and Depolicing Gets Wrong and Who It Hurts Most. Rafael Mangual, thank you so much for joining us here on Good Day.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you're the son of a police officer.
I am.
And you work for the Manhattan Institute, right?
Yep.
You're figuring out numbers. You're a data guy.
Sure.
And so you put all the numbers together.
That's right.
And you came up and you wrote Criminal Injustice. Why did you want to write this book?
I wanted to write the book because I got tired of reading these stories of truly heinous offenses committed by people who had 10, 15, 20, 30 prior arrests, who were out on parole, out on bail, and I found myself asking the same question over and over again. So what is this person doing on the street? And, you know, I started to really look into it, and the answer to that question is misguided policy. And that misguided policy, I think, comes from a good place. I think people over the 1990s and 1980s saw the criminal justice system get really tough, and they thought it overcorrected in the punitive direction. They wanted to make it fairer. But now we've overcorrected in the lenient direction. And the victims of those crimes, they're disproportionately in the low-income minority areas that reformers say they want to help.
You know what's interesting? The Speaker of the State Assembly, Carl Hastie, he lives in the Bronx.
Yep.
The Bronx has seen crime surge.
Yeah.
And the other day, he wrote and tweeted out that blaming bail reform is disingenuous. What numbers is he seeing, and what numbers does that figure into what you're doing?
I think it's the better question to ask is what numbers is he blinding himself to, because I think that tweet is disingenuous. I mean, when you look at one of the most important numbers to me with respect to bail reform is the share of people arrested and people arrested for serious violent crimes that were out on pretrial release. Between 2019 and 2020, the year before and year after bail reform went into effect, that number increased by 25%, which is exactly what you would expect to see if bail reform were contributing to the crime rise. Now, people try to look at, you know, the low percentage of people who reoffend in a given month, which is, I think, a really silly way to look at it because, of course, over the course of the year, that number grows. But they're looking at the entire pretrial population, which doesn't really tell you much. What you want to look at, if you understand the central critique of bail reform, which is that New York doesn't consider dangerousness, you want to look at the people who are most likely to be incarcerated pretrial. And that's the supervised release population. And those numbers are through the roof. You're looking at a recidivism rate of about 40+%.
Wow.
And we're looking at New York, and especially New York City, not allowing the judges to consider the level of dangerousness, as well as LA. So like, you have to take into factor that. But I think the numbers that Carl Hastie and other politicians are looking at are saying that crime is up across the country. That's the argument that they've used time and time again. Why is that argument wrong? Is it just like a blatant statement to kind of cover what is going on, or?
Yeah, well, I think it ignores a lot of differences between and among places. But one thing, bail reform is not unique to New York. This is a national trend. That's one point.
Okay.
But I also think it's a little wrong to say crime is up across the country, because the reality is that crime is very, very hyper concentrated wherever it is that you are. Here in New York City, about 3.5% of street segments will see 50% of all violent crime.
Yeah.
About 5% of street segments will see 50% of violent crime. That didn't change in 2020. That hasn't changed recently. So when we say that crime is up across the board, that's not really true. Crime is up in the places that are most vulnerable to crime increases as a response to these kinds of misguided policies, which, again, I think are well-meaning, but they're informed by a narrative that is just false. The idea that we over-incarcerate, the idea that police are these violent Neanderthals ready to pull a trigger at, you know, the slightest offense, and that's just not true.
The thing that is true is that there are these heinous incidents within the police force, but they're human. You're never going to get it perfect across the board. What I found was interesting when the interview with Trevor Noah, which I know has blown up, and has blown up your book as well, when you're talking about incarceration and decarceration, I think his argument was the fact that incarcerating people never rehabilitated them, which you were saying I mean, we get that's true, but what is your kind of big picture on incarcerating? Should we be incarcerating more people? Should we not be doing that? What's the picture there?
I think there are two things that we have to recognize. There is such thing as an over-incarceration problem, right? There is some subset of our prison and jail populations that doesn't belong there, and we should work to identify who those people are and release them. What people don't truly appreciate, though, is that there is a larger subset of our general population that belongs in prison and jail that's not there. And so while we do have an over-incarceration problem, we have a much bigger under-incarceration problem. That's what I want to bring attention to. Now, it's true that we should focus and continue to invest in rehabilitation efforts, but we haven't figured that out.
Yeah.
What incarceration does, though, is it incapacitates offenders. It keeps people on the street safe from the criminals that would otherwise victimize them. And that's the main point of incarceration. That's why, we value this, and that's why decarceration is so dangerous.
So in the book you say, the perpetuation of false narratives about policing and incarceration have emboldened some of the most radical elements of the criminal justice reform movements, such that once fringe ideas like the abolition of police and prisons are dramatically closer to the mainstream than they were just a year ago. So do you think, you believe all this talk about defunding the police and, bail reform shouldn't be reformed again, emboldens those in the criminal world? I do. It also emboldens people who, really just want to tear the system down. I think it would have been unheard of for a city council in a place like New York to have open abolitionists elected to office. I think it would have been unheard of 10 years ago to have a situation in which nearly 50 million Americans are living in jurisdictions with self-described progressive prosecutors who are unilaterally abrogating duly enacted laws and saying we're just not going to prosecute it because we don't like it, who are saying, yeah, this was a gang-related crime, but we're not going to take advantage of this sentencing enhancement that would keep that individual off the street longer. So yeah, I do see a really troubling trend of once fringe ideas making their way into the mainstream and informing policy more and more. Well, the book is fascinating, and it's all about data. I mean, you really work the numbers. Sadly, the Black and brown community is really feeling it the most.
It is.
It's all in this book called Criminal Injustice: What the Push for Decarceration and Depolicing Gets Wrong and Who Hurts It Most. Rafael Mangual, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.